Hello, students. This is your favorite American history teacher, Mr. Salyers, coming at you with some more history information. We're now on chapter 29, and we're still talking about communism, and we're talking about the Cold War. However, we're talking about the end of the Cold War. We've followed this through several chapters. The reason is the Cold War has been a huge part of our American history from 1945 after World War II when the Soviets would not leave East Germany and not least leave East Berlin until 1991. The Cold War and communism drove our foreign policy that entire time. So we're talking about the collapse of communism and the end of the Cold War. So there's a French word called détente that you need to know. Détente means a relaxing of tensions between the US and the Soviet Union. It was first proposed by Richard Nixon when he was president. He was the first president to actually visit Moscow. When he did, he signed what was known as the SALT Agreement, which limited nuclear weapons. He agreed to sell grain to the Soviets, and the U.S. reduced our armed forces from 3.5 million to 2.3 million. So this détente, this relaxing of tensions, is trying to stop the Cold War. We're trying to become more friendly with the Soviet Union under Nixon. Another thing he did was he opened up relations with China, which was also communist. Before this time, the U.S. had no dealings with China whatsoever. Nixon changed that again as a part of détente, trying to get along and be friendlier with these communist countries. When Jimmy Carter, was elected president in '76, uh, 3 years later in '79, détente ended. This relaxing of tensions ended because the Soviets invaded Afghanistan. This caused the United States to boycott the 1980 Olympics, which were in Moscow. So we're back to being more bitter rivals with the Soviets during this time. And then we have Ronald Wilson Reagan, which is elected president in 1980. He was much, much more aggressive against the communists. In 1983, the year I was born, he sent U.S. Marines to the Caribbean, where communists had taken control, to drive them out. And in 1985, which was the start of his second term, he announced what was known as the Reagan Doctrine, meaning that we were not only going to try to contain communism in its existing borders, like we had since Truman was president, but we were now going to actively try and roll it back and get rid of communism in countries where it already existed. Um, this is kind of a neat event in U.S. history. The United States military developed something called the Strategic Defense Initiative. However, the nickname for this was, believe it or not, Star Wars. And the goal was with this program was to put all kinds of satellites and weapons in space that could be used to attack the Soviet Union. Um, it was our plan to develop lasers in space capable of shooting down nuclear missiles. This program never actually got much past the design phase. We designed it, we had a concept of what it would look like, never actually started building this stuff. However, the threat of it was enough to cause the Soviet Union to throw in the towel. They could not afford to keep up with that kind of technology. They were already drained of their resources, they were doing very poorly. They basically gave up and quit trying to compete uh, in that arena technologically and building up the military. When you watch your lecture or when you watch your slideshow, I would like for you guys to watch this video on this screen because it's really cool, of what Star Wars was going to look like. This is what was being designed when Reagan was president. So the Cold War endgame looked like this. Reagan supported Afghan rebels against the Soviets when they tried to attack Afghanistan. This further helped to drain the Soviets' resources. Reagan also cut off technology and economic resources that we were selling to the Soviets to put them further behind. And in 1987, Ronald Reagan gave one of the most famous speeches ever by an American president when he stood in of the Soviets. He said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." And on this slide, when you look at the slideshow, I want you to watch this speech. This is a very, very powerful speech by a very good president. So Reagan had a lot of success. He saw the Soviet Union begin to fall. Democratic governments began to be elected in the former Soviet satellite states. The Berlin Wall eventually fell and the Soviet Union eventually collapsed. There's no more Soviet Union today. They don't still control the satellite states around them, at least not officially. Mikhail Gorbachev was the leader of the Soviets while Reagan was president. He tried to reform communism so they could become more free. For example, he reduced restrictions on speech in the press. The communists in the past had not allowed a free press and not allowed free speech. That began to change under Gorbachev. He let people leave the Soviet Union, whereas before they could not, and allowed Eastern Europe to hold free elections. Now, the result of all this, he was trying to reform communism. What he actually did was destroy communism. Communism. Uh, Gorbachev's efforts to increase freedom actually caused the USSR to break up. The reason is once people got a taste of this freedom, elections, freedom of the press, freedom of speech, they wanted to become totally free. So in 1991, Gorbachev recognized the independence of Lithuania and other Baltic states. Those are states in Eastern Europe, the Soviet satellite states, and the Soviet Union was officially over. These former Soviet satellite states banded together and uh, became what was known as the Commonwealth of Independent States. They all joined together, the former Soviet satellite states in Eastern Europe. Shortly after that, the Berlin Wall fell. The Iron Curtain that we talked about a couple chapters ago was lifted between East and West Europe, and Germany was reunified into one country, which they still are today. So, folks, that was the ending of the Cold War. We've been with this subject a while. If you have any questions, email me. All of my videos are now going to be on YouTube. It's quicker to upload them that way. I suggest that you subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm going to start uploading some stuff on there, some stuff not even related to history, maybe just some stuff for fun. So, I hope everybody is doing well. I hope and pray that you're safe and healthy. If you have any questions, send me an email, and everybody have a great day.